On a quiet afternoon in a small neighborhood, a young black girl stepped up to open her front door, taking in the stillness around her. But then, out of nowhere, a pale, panicked woman appeared, shoving a newborn baby into her arms and vanishing without a single word. No name, no money, no help. She stood there, holding a feverish infant, overwhelmed and completely alone. She could have walked away, but she didn't. And that one act of kindness would go on to change her difficult life in ways she never imagined. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The afternoon light was soft and golden, filtering lazily through the narrow gap between apartment buildings as it drifted down into the alleyway like honey over rusted rooftops. Spring had just begun to wake the neighborhood. Budding tree branches peeked over chain-length fences, and the scent of damp concrete mingled with the faint aroma of someone frying onions 2 houses down. At the farthest corner of the alley stood a modest house, its paint chipped at the corners, its mailbox tilted forward like it too was tired of standing. Inside, 12-year-old Zariah Brown sat hunched over her math workbook, elbows on the worn kitchen table that doubled as her study desk. The only sound in the room was the quiet ticking of the clock and the scratch-scratch of her pencil against paper. The small space was filled with practical warmth. Hand-sewn curtains, a humming mini-fridge, and shelves lined with thrift store books and childhood figurines. Though the house was no bigger than a shoebox, it bore the scent of care. Neat, clean, protected. Her mother Clarice had always said, "It doesn't matter how small a place is, as long as it's safe." And yours? Zariah's shoulders ached. Her eyes blurred over the long division she was trying to make sense of. She let out a breath, pushed back her chair, and stood up. The room felt stuffy. A layer of heat clung to the walls like breath on glass. She padded over to the front door, scuffed, crooked on its hinges, and gently unlatched the bolt. Maybe a little air would help her think clearer. As the door creaked open, the quiet of the alley shattered. From the far end, someone came running, fast, disoriented. Her footsteps echoed erratically off the brick walls. Zariah blinked, startled, as a woman appeared, white, mid-30s maybe, her blonde hair sticking to her temples in clumps, her sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder like it had been yanked on in a rush. Her face was pale and flushed in patches, her eyes wild, watery, darted around like they were searching for something she'd already lost. And then she saw Zariah. The woman stumbled to a stop in front of the door, breath ragged. She cradled a bundle tight to her chest, wrapped in a worn pink blanket, the faint shape of a baby just visible beneath the folds. "Please," she gasped, voice cracked and shaking. "Her name is Lily. I need to go. I'll be right back. Just, please, hold her for a minute." Her words trembled in the air, already dissolving. Before Zariah could even say a word, before she could ask who this woman was or where she was going, the baby was in her arms. A cloth bag was shoved into her hand, its contents clinking faintly. A bottle, diapers, a half-full can of formula. And then the woman turned and ran, down the alley, gone. Zariah stood frozen, her breath caught in her chest. The baby in her arms stirred and let out a soft, struggling cry. She looked down. The infant's skin was pale, her hair the color of dandelion fluff, her tiny face flushed with heat. Zariah didn't move, couldn't. Somewhere behind her the math workbook lay forgotten. The air from the open door chilled her legs, but the heat of the child pressed against her chest felt impossibly real. Heavy, and all she could think was, this isn't normal, this is something that changes everything. The door clicked shut behind her like a full stop to a sentence she hadn't written. The alley was quiet again, the wind whispering between fences, as if nothing had happened. But in her arms, everything was happening all at once. Lily's body was small and warm, her cries sharp and confused, her fingers grasping at the air like she was reaching for someone who was already gone. Zariah stood in the entryway for a moment longer, unsure whether her legs would hold. Then, tightening her arms around the baby, she turned and carried her inside. The house, once familiar, now felt foreign. The lights too bright, the air too thin. She laid Lily down gently on the worn sofa, the baby's tiny fists still trembling, and reached for the phone on the kitchen counter, her hands slick with nervous sweat. She dialed the number without thinking. "Mama," she said, barely keeping her voice steady. "Mama, a woman came to the door. She gave me her baby. She said she'd be right back, but she didn't. She ran." There was a pause, just long enough for Zariah's throat to tighten. Her mother's voice came through, tired but steady, the clatter of industrial machines faint in the background. "Is the baby okay?" "She's crying. Real hot, too. I don't know what to do." Clarice exhaled slowly. "Okay. You remember when you helped me with little Devon last summer? Same thing now. First, check her diaper, make sure she's clean. Then, get that blue blanket from the closet. You gotta keep her warm but not too hot. Feel her forehead. You got the baby thermometer, right?" "Top drawer," Zariah said, already moving. "Good girl. Use that. I'll call back in 10, you hear me?" "You can do this, Z." Zariah's lip trembled, but she nodded even though her mother couldn't see. "Okay." The next 20 minutes blurred into a quiet sort of chaos. Zariah moved on muscle memory, one step after another. She changed Lily's diaper, clumsily but carefully. She warmed a bottle, just like her mother used to show her, tested on the inside of her wrist, not too hot. She held the baby against her chest, whispering whatever lullabies came to mind, even if the words weren't right. Lily whimpered but drank. Slowly she quieted. And in that stillness, Zariah sat back, holding the baby in her arms. Her heart still raced, her breath still caught every now and then, but the world hadn't collapsed, and Lily was still here. Her mama called back, voice calm but proud. "You did good, baby. Real good. I wish I could be there. But I'm stuck until morning." Zariah didn't ask her to come home. She knew the answer. Her mother worked 2 shifts back to back to keep the lights on and the pantry stocked. If she left early, someone else might take her spot. And then what? So Zariah just said, "It's okay, Mama. I got her." And for the rest of that night, in that little house in the narrow alley, she meant it. Even when Lily cried again, even when the fear came crawling back, even when the woman didn't return, Zariah held on, because someone had to keep the promise, even when the one who made it didn't. By the time the first pale streaks of morning light crept across the cracked walls of the little house, Zariah's eyes burned with exhaustion. She hadn't slept, not even for a minute. All through the night she'd sat on the floor beside the couch, wrapped in her school hoodie, holding Lily against her chest, rocking gently whenever the baby whimpered. The baby's forehead had grown warmer, her cheeks flushed deeper, her breathing shallower, quick little gasps like her lungs were trying too hard. Zariah had checked the thermometer every 2 hours, just like Mama told her. At 3 a.m. it read 100.4. At 4:30, 101.1, but at 6:7, her fingers trembled as she reached for the phone and texted her mother again. "Temps 102, she's breathing weird." 3 dots appeared, then a message. "Baby girl, you need to take her in. You remember the way to St. Miriam?" Zariah stared at the message. Her throat tightened. She knew the way. 5 blocks west, past the bodega, then the fire station. She'd walked it once with Mama last year when they'd visited someone from church, but back then she wasn't carrying a baby. She pulled open the kitchen drawer and rifled through it. No quarters, no bills, nothing. The bus wouldn't let her on without fare. She didn't even have a student card that worked outside school days. For a moment the silence of the house pressed in. Too quiet, too heavy. Lily's breath came with a wheeze now, tiny whimpers hitching in her throat. Zariah blinked fast and grabbed the old backpack she used for school. She emptied out her textbooks, stuffed in diapers, a spare bottle, the thermometer, and a towel. She wrapped Lily carefully in one of Mama's scarves, layered a baby blanket around her like armor, and pulled the soft hat down over her ears. Then she slipped out the door and crossed the alley to the Johnsons' yard. Their boy Marcus had a rusty blue bike he never locked. She knew he wouldn't mind. She left a note. "Borrowing your bike. Emergency. We'll bring it back." The wheels creaked as she led it back to her house. She strapped the backpack to the handlebars, cradled Lily in one arm, and climbed on. And then she pedaled, slow, careful. Every bump in the sidewalk sent a jolt through her arms. Every glance from strangers made her pull the scarf tighter around Lily's face. Her legs ached, but she kept going. 1 block, then 2. She whispered lullabies between breaths, tried to keep her voice from shaking. 5 blocks had never felt longer, but when the hospital finally came into view, its wide silver doors gleaming under the early sun, Zariah's breath caught in her chest, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what it meant to get there. Alone, afraid, but determined, because if no one else would come back for Lily, she would. The automatic doors of St. Miriam's emergency room slid open with a quiet whoosh as Zariah pushed the rusted bike inside. Her arms aching, her legs shaking, her breath catching in shallow gasps. The lobby was cool and sterile, humming with fluorescent lights and distant beeping monitors. A few heads turned, then paused. A black girl, maybe 12, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big, her shoes mismatched and dust-covered, stood at the entrance, holding a pale white infant wrapped in blankets too thin for a morning this cold. Nurse Carola was the first to move. Her instincts kicked in faster than protocol. She rushed across the tile floor, heart skipping a beat as she took in the image. This girl, this baby, the way the child clung weakly to her shirt. Zariah tightened her grip around Lily, her voice low but firm despite the way her knees trembled beneath her. "Her name is Lily," she said. "A woman gave her to me yesterday, said she'd come back. She never did." Carla didn't ask if Zariah was telling the truth. She didn't ask why a black child was carrying a white baby. She didn't press about the clothes or the backpack or the sweat drying at the girl's temple. She just reached for the wall phone and calmly said, "I need pediatric social services and security at triage now." Within minutes, a small medical team emerged from behind the double doors. One nurse gently reached for Lily. Zariah hesitated, just for a moment, then handed her over, whispering, "Check her breathing. It's fast. Her temp was 102. I kept her cool with a damp towel. There's formula in my bag. She drank half the bottle. And she didn't cry during diaper changes, so I think her stomach's okay." The nurse blinked, momentarily thrown by how calm and clinical the girl sounded. Zariah was guided into a small side room. The walls were pastel blue, meant to calm nerves, but she couldn't sit. Her eyes followed every adult that passed by the glass window. Her fingers tapped the strap of her backpack rhythmically, nervously. When a woman in a burgundy blazer stepped in, social worker badge clipped to her belt, Zariah turned quickly. She told everything, from the exact time the woman knocked on her door, to how she called her mama during the night, to the way Lily's breathing shifted after 3 a.m. She recited each thermometer reading like it was a school presentation. She described the walk, the weight of the baby on her arms, the fear that someone might stop her and not believe her. And when the woman asked gently, "Why didn't you call the police right away?" Zariah answered, almost in a whisper, "Because I didn't want them to think I stole her. Because sometimes people don't see what's really happening, they just see skin." The woman didn't speak for a long moment. Her expression changed, not surprise, not pity, but something heavier, something like shame. "I see you now," she said softly, "and I hear you." And for the first time since that door opened yesterday, Zariah let herself breathe. While Zariah waited in the quiet hospital room, her backpack at her feet, her heart finally slowing from its sprint, the search for Lily's mother unfolded miles away in a different kind of silence. In a precinct office across the city, a young officer scanned through recent missing persons reports. The name came up almost immediately. Thomas Langford, Westport District. Missing wife and infant daughter since Sunday morning. When detectives arrived at the Langford residence, they found Thomas in his home office, the place in perfect order, every book straight, every picture frame dusted. But the man in the chair looked like he hadn't slept in days. His voice cracked the moment he spoke. "My wife, Emily, she took Lily and left. I've been looking since yesterday morning, but there's been nothing. Not a single call, not even a trace." The detective's tone softened. "Why didn't you report it sooner?" "I did. I filed it Sunday. But no one knew where to begin. She didn't take a car, just walked out with the baby and disappeared." He hesitated, then added quieter, "She's been different since Lily was born, distant, fragile. I thought it was just fatigue at first. Then she started forgetting things. avoiding mirrors, holding Lily too tight or not at all. I begged her to talk to someone, to get help. She smiled like it was nothing. She always smiled. He paused, rubbing a hand across his jaw. I was scared, he admitted, not of her, but of what might happen if someone else found out, if they judged her, or us. What if they took Lily away? It was guilt that weighed down every word, and the officers could see it clearly. A man too afraid of the system to ask it for help until it was too late. Later that morning, a break came from an unexpected place. A weak cell signal pinged from a cafe in East Side. Surveillance footage showed a disoriented woman sitting alone in the corner, cradling a photo frame, staring at nothing. When police arrived, they found her just like that. Emily Langford, 33, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, her eyes sunken, her arms wrapped around a picture of Lily like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. She didn't cry, didn't resist. When asked where she had been, she only whispered, "I don't remember." And when they told her Lily was safe, found warm and breathing in the arms of a girl who refused to give up, she looked up for the first time in hours. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled. "She's okay?" "She's okay," the officer said. And for the first time in days, Emily Langford finally let herself fall apart. The room was quiet now, filtered sunlight spilling across the tile floor of the pediatric ward, soft and golden like a silent thank you. Lily lay in a clear-sided hospital crib, a soft pink flush returning to her cheeks, her tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The fever had broken just after dawn, and though her body was still weak, her little fingers gripped the edge of her blanket like they were holding on to the world. Zariah sat nearby, legs tucked under her in the too-big chair, her eyes never leaving the crib. Her backpack sat at her feet, unzipped, a wrinkled bottle sticking out from the top. She didn't ask for food. She didn't ask for rest. She just watched Lily sleep like nothing else mattered. And for her, nothing else did. Then the door opened. Soft leather shoes on polished floor. A tall man in a gray coat stepped inside, his hands shaking despite the calm he tried to project. His eyes landed on Lily, and for a moment he stopped breathing. Thomas Langford crossed the room slowly. His voice caught somewhere in his chest. When he reached the crib and saw his daughter breathing, color in her skin, he let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside him for days. Then he turned and saw her. The girl who carried his daughter through the cold, who never let go, who didn't wait for someone else to fix it. Zariah looked up, unsure of who he was at first, but when she saw the way he looked at Lily, like the earth had returned to its axis, she understood. He dropped to his knees in front of her. "Thank you," he said, voice thick, broken, human. "You saved my little girl. You saved my wife. You saved a family that almost lost itself to silence." Zariah shifted, eyes darting to the floor, her cheeks flushed, not with pride, but something quieter. "I just didn't want her to cry anymore," she mumbled. "That's all." Thomas nodded, swallowing back the weight in his throat. "You did what grown-ups were too scared to do. You did it without asking for anything." Zariah didn't say anything after that. She just looked back at Lily and smiled, small, tired. The second change arrived when Thomas Langford stood in Clarice's diner booth, holding out a job contract in a trembling hand. "You've raised someone I'd trust with my child's life," he said simply. "And I could use someone like you managing our operations, someone who actually sees people." The offer came with triple the pay, health benefits, and fixed hours. Clarice hesitated, not because she didn't want it, but because it had been so long since someone looked at her like she deserved more. The third shift came quietly, gently, like the soft turning of a page. Emily Langford entered full-time residential therapy. During that fragile time, Thomas hired a licensed caregiver to help with Lily, but he also reached out to someone familiar, someone steady. Ruby, Clarice's older sister, a retired daycare owner, arrived with warm eyes and humming lullabies, settling into the Langford household like she'd always belonged there. 2 months passed. Seasons leaned into summer. and behind the Langford estate, in a garden once wilted and forgotten, new life took hold. White chrysanthemums bloomed along the back fence. Lavender burst in soft waves near the patio, and every afternoon, beneath the dappled shade of the old oak tree, 3 figures could be seen on a quilt: Zaria cross-legged with a book in hand, Lily babbling beside her with sticky fingers and a sun hat too big, and Emily, healthier now, clearer, kneeling in the dirt planting marigolds with quiet hands. One afternoon, Emily sat beside Zaria, wiping sweat from her brow. Her voice was husky but calm, her eyes clearer than they'd been in months. "You didn't just save my daughter," she said, voice catching. "You reminded me. Being a mother doesn't mean being perfect. It means refusing to walk away, even when you're breaking." Zaria didn't say anything at first. She just smiled, watching Lily toddle after a butterfly. But in her chest something deep and quiet bloomed. Not pride, not glory, just a knowing that even small hands, even a girl from a quiet alley, could carry more love than the world expected, and sometimes more than it deserved. And as the breeze moved through the garden and Lily laughed for no reason at all, Zaria leaned back into the sun and let herself believe, finally, that this wasn't just the end of something. It was the beginning of a season that belonged to all of them. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.